Yes, hello. Hi, hello. Big welcome, huge welcome today to the beautiful Soul Loaf and particularly the Soul Spotlight part of that. Okay, so just before I get going, if you don't know who I am, I'm Jane Pearl. I'm a shamanic practitioner and teacher, and I'm an intuitive soul guide. So I am thrilled today to have with me my very special guest, Theresa. Um, she is such an inspiration, absolutely incredible, and changes lives all around the world with her inspirational way of being, the hope that she brings to people, and the courage and the pure soul, the depth of the soul energy there that Ellen so freely shares and really holds a space for others to do that too. Okay, so Ellen, welcome.
Thank
Please
you.
introduce yourself to us.
Well, I guess I've gotten to know Jane just through, social media, which seems to draw the whole world together. And it's just been a real journey just getting to know her. And so, as she said in the beginning, I'm Ellen Theresa, and I am a empowerment coach. And I've kind of changed that around a lot over different times. What type of coach am I? But really, I'm an empowerment coach. I like to empower people and to see people come into their own voice and to be in their own being and to be able to take back their lives where they've given it away to the powers that be, to find who they really are. And so I spend time doing that. Plus, I have my own podcast, which I had a beautiful guest named Jane Pearl on it, which was so wonderful. And let's see. And I also do motivational talks, and I love to write. I do a lot of writing. So yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's beautiful. Thank you. Um, okay, Ellen. So, I mean, I know that your story is such a rich tapestry of everything that has happened throughout your life, and you have weaved that very beautifully, I think, together to bring this into the present. So, could you tell us more about your backstory, how you actually got from where you were to where you are now?
Well, now that is a interesting story to shuffle in an hour's time. But
Yeah.
um, for me, for those of you who are listening, I'm from America, and a very running theme in America is Christian fundamentalism. And so I was raised in a very strict Christian fundamentalist household. And what that really meant was we would be at church 6 or 7 days a week. We were reading the Bible every day. I was memorizing scripture as young as 5, 6, 7, and really beginning to get really thrust into the ways and the beings of the church. So much so that when, in my 20s, I wanted to be a nun. Like I really wanted to spend the rest of my life being a nun. Like I just thought, okay, I want to do that. But as with everything, the house itself was not a perfect house. And, because there were such gender norms in the house of the mom, the wife, the woman had to do something one way and men had to do another way, there would be a lot of oppressive things that came to me as a child. And so, there were areas of abuse that I went through, and I, won't belabor, that or go into depth on that. But there were areas of just all sorts of different abuse that happened. And it was because of that controlling environment, that environment that put people into roles and places. And even though I was a very spiritual kid growing up, I, saw angels as a child. I recognized dark energies as a child. A lot of that got shut down because of the Christian influence that was seen as woo woo and you can't be doing that. And so I just kind of was making my way, through the world that I couldn't have that and couldn't see those things. And eventually I stopped seeing them as a child. And I believe that was because it was told to me so much that it was wrong, it was a sin. And so I grew up with this very imbalanced way of seeing myself, what it meant to be a woman, what it meant to know the universe, God, however you want to call God, was just very much judgment, sin, consciousness. And I was raised that I was just sinner and evil, and there was something with me that needed to be fixed. So that's
Yeah.
a little.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So very, very challenging
Oh,
childhood. Absolutely. And as you say, totally controlled.
Yes.
completely, not able to kind of think for yourself at all, and shutting down that connection to the angels and to other light beings, and also, of course, the dark energies as well, which are just as important as the light, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah,
They are.
we can't have one without the other. It just doesn't work like that. So, yeah. Okay. All right. So that then, that foundation there with your childhood, Ellen, how do you feel that that has helped you?
Yes. It's interesting because I was thinking as you were talking, I was reminded of where I went to get away from things in the house. And it was in the
Mm,
woods. I would always go in the woods and by a river and I'd go down there. And I didn't know anything about magic. I didn't know anything about all of these different things. But all of that pain and the stuff that was happening in the house drove me to this almost like a very vivid imagination that I had. I had an extremely vivid imagination. So I would go into these woods and I'd name them. I'd name the trees certain names, and I didn't know exactly what I was doing. And I even called it the magic wood. There was this one part where it was just really silent. And so I would be down in the woods and I'd be hanging out there, um, and pretending I was going to magical lands and back and forth and things like that. And so I think one of the things that came from my upbringing was the ability to imagine something better,
mm,
to imagine that a way out was coming, to imagine that this is not going to be forever. There is a place where there's magic, and there's a place where there's peace, and there's a place where there's joy. And so I would say that that's one of the biggest things that happened to me was the gift of imagining. And that was something that nobody could take away from me. Nobody
mm.
could put it in the Bible and script it. Nobody could say, you can't imagine. They wouldn't know if I was imagining. You know what I
No,
mean?
no, that's right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. So that really was freedom.
Very much so.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how you found freedom. It reminds me actually very much of sometimes when we have really difficult relationships as children. Um, Very often there's someone somewhere that comes in and will give that love that we so desperately need. I look at them in a way as being earth angels. I know I had a few of them around when I was with some of my relatives. They were amazing. And they come in and they provide that love. And I think it, in a way, it really helps us to realize that somebody loves us. So therefore, we must be lovable. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it brings that energy in. And I think in that woods there, in the magic woods, with all of the trees and all of your earth family, really, who they are in that magical woods, you receive so much from them. It's like they came in as your caregivers, as the ones that gave you the love and the nourishment that you so desperately needed.
Yes. Yes. I would have never
Yeah.
looked at it that way, but yes. Yeah.
Mm,
Because
yeah.
I always felt when I would go down there, it was a place of peace and a place of connection, even though I didn't know what I was connecting to necessarily. And, we weren't allowed to connect with certain things, but I still found a way down there to connect to something that was positive and peaceful and loving and kind
Yeah.
and gentle. The trees were so gentle. I remember I would lean back on this one tree and it was just gentle. The
Mm,
You could feel held by the tree. Now in my adult brain, at 54, I could go back and be like, I know what that tree was doing. But then I had no idea. I just thought, oh, it's holding me. It's holding me up. Here
yeah.
I am, giving
That's
me
right.
courage, giving
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And everybody needs that, don't they? Every single person needs something or somewhere or someone that can hold them up, like you say, that can surround them with love and help them to feel that they are okay. And like you so beautifully said a while ago, they're imagining now that there is another way, there is another world that's waiting for you. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, fantastic. Okay. All right, so that was childhood,
Yes.
up until early teens, did you say?
Yeah.
When you were,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So
okay.
in my early teens, I went through just a real traumatic period of 4 years when I gave up just so I was like, I got to get out of this house. And so I left and I ran away. And that was where I ended up being trafficked. And I was trafficked for 4 years. And I just thought, my goodness, all this dark energy is around me. Where are the trees? Where are the flowers? Where's the good things? And then eventually I got out of that. And I know I'm fast forwarding here. And then when I hit in my 20s was when I had an encounter. It was a spiritual encounter because by around that time I was just like, I don't want to hear anything else, really about God. I don't want to hear about Jesus. I don't want to hear about, like I don't want to hear anything. But in my 20s, in my early 20s, I would say that I had an encounter with the Christ, is what I would say, a real encounter that I had with Christ. And I remember just feeling the light coming in, and I was sitting with another person who was telling me about the love of God, and all of a sudden I felt all this light come in me, and I didn't know what it was exactly. I had no idea because I hadn't felt this, even though I had grown up in church and I had been
Yeah,
hearing the word Christ the whole time. I just knew Christ as rules. And
yeah,
here I am sitting on this chair, and like this love and this light was just coming in. I thought, what is this? And she's like, that's Jesus. That's Christ. That's Christ loving you. And I didn't have words for it. I didn't quite know what was going on, but I just remember saying, if you're real, then there's two things I want you to do. I want you to stop all the abuse happening in my life, and I want you to set me free from drugs. And if you do those things, I'll follow you the rest of my life. Because this was what I was taught. You follow it. It's this whole thing. I did have some religion there. And it happened. It just happened. And it all stopped and everything ended and things began to
mm,
shift for me. And I felt lighter on the inside. And so immediately I was thrust back into the church again. I went back into the church, but this time in a little bit of a different way, in a different vein. And it was more personal, and there was something, I was connecting with something bigger than myself. Even though there was the church and the pastors and the rules and different things, I knew I was connecting to something, and I
mm,
knew that could never go away. And it hasn't. It's never left me, that experience. It's always remained there up to now. So you can see that there's like a spiritual progression that was starting to happen from a religious upbringing that was very controlled to more of a freedom within religion, still in the Christian religion. But I
mm,
was learning so much. I was picking up gifts I had never had before. That was where I learned to speak. That was when I learned to have prophecies or intuitive guidance. I witnessed healings. I saw amazing miracles, things happen in some of those church services, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is reminding me back of the woods. When I would go back into the woods, I
yeah,
started to see this correlation between the tree holding me, and now we're going to call it maybe God holding me or the universe holding me, but I could feel the same energy, and they were
mm,
like heart beating together. And I thought, oh, there's no separation here.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that is just absolutely wonderful. Really, really amazing. Yeah, so that I think the way you describe that as well, Ellen, has such power. It really does. It has such resonance. The words that you speak when you describe those two separate experiences, really, of being in your early 20s, just before you had that encounter with Christ, yeah, and all of the backstory from that, going back to that control, the enforcement, you will be punished because you're a sinner and all this kind of thing. And if you don't do this and you don't do that, you will be condemned to the gates of hell or whatever, that
Yes,
kind of energy, um, complete mind control. And then having that, I'm going to use the word awakening because
exactly.
that's what it feels like. Absolutely. Having that awakening then at that stage of your life, after coming through so much trauma,
Yeah.
it was like well, a turning point, a real turning point for you, wasn't it? Really, it's like a crossroads in a way. You can go one way or the other,
Mhm.
and you chose to go back into church sometime later, but with so much more awareness and freedom and
Yes.
love and acceptance, actually.
Yes.
Acceptance of this God or whatever you call them, God is fine. Acceptance of God as a loving and holding and beautiful presence, not a punishing one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I would say that some of the deepest healings that I've had in my life, except with my ayahuasca experience, because we'll get to that.
Yeah.
As I progressed, I did go through a deconstruction as well out of religion, happened in the church. I
Mm,
had incredible healings, incredible personal encounters of healing, incredible physical healings, incredible emotional and mental healings happened with me while I was still practicing Christianity. So even though I don't like the constraints of religion and all of that, I can say that what came from that, there was a purity of a work that was happening in me because I approached God from a very just pure lens. I didn't know any better. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, oh,
yeah.
and so I was met with this light, this powerful light that just shot from the top of my head to the soles of my feet, and it would be continual. And it went for many years where I was just experiencing these healings because I had so many layers of trauma, like you're saying,
Mm, mm,
things needed to come off. And the only way that they were going to come off was if I really took that shamanic journey, took that going back and looking at this stuff and so the freedom just kept happening until it didn't,
yeah.
until I
Yeah.
realized there's a problem. But
Right.
also before we keep going,
Okay. Yes. Yes. Let's do that. Okay. Right. Let's go with that. When you realised there was a problem, can you tell us about that?
I can totally tell you about that. So I was working on the mission field. I had given my whole life to becoming a missionary. I wanted to tell everybody about Jesus, and I'm on the mission field. And I remember standing before this very big crowd of people, and I would preach a lot. I was in front of crowds a lot. This was something I did. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not resonating anymore with this message because the message was that people were sinners and they were terrible and they needed to come and they needed to have all this help. And I remember thinking to myself, well, Jesus is okay. And, Jesus has been okay with me and Christ has been, this is okay too.
Mm.
What am I not resonating with anymore? And it's the worst place to have it happen is when you're on a mission field and
Yeah.
you're supposed to be telling people this message. And you're thinking,
Yeah.
I'm not believing this anymore like this. This is we're trying to shove beliefs on people. We're trying to change people. And instead of invite people in to discover what God is to them, instead of this is what you need to follow. And so
Mm.
it was an unraveling, Jane, like no other. Everything began. I mean, there's a way to say it hit the fans. Everything
Yeah.
hit the fans. And I realized, oh gosh, I can't do this message anymore because I believe that God is bigger than what the Bible says and what you're
Mm.
asking me to preach about and what you're telling me I need to do. It feels a little bit bigger and it feels like we're trying to build an empire here with this versus bringing people into just real encounters for themselves. And so
Yeah.
that got me digging. It got me to unearth really the difference between religion and spirituality, because spirituality, everyone is a spiritual being. Spirituality is your own belief system, what you believe, right? Everybody is spiritual.
Yeah.
But religion is something very different because religion had dogma and these rules and regulations. And so as I began to really listen to different people who had what we call deconstructing your faith, where you're literally taking the tenets of the faith bit by bit and tossing this out and tossing this out, everything we were told not to do in the church.
Yeah.
I was tossing out these things and realizing, gosh, I'm feeling more free inside. I'm feeling better about myself personally. Um, I'm actually more likable because I was pretty I was pretty judgy, when I was in the church. And I thought, gosh, people are kind of liking me a little bit more. I'm a little bit easier to get along with.
Yeah.
Um, and it was because I was realizing that, there is no judgment and nobody is going to be judged, and that God is love and God is light and God is healing, and that this God was not about hurting people and condemning people and sending people to hell. So the more I dug, the more I realized that hell was a man-made concept to control people. Well, that was
Yeah.
so like, I was like mortified, and I was sitting here thinking, oh my God, I'm suddenly like not believing in hell. What is wrong with me? Then came the whole Satan idea. Like, is Satan real? I was realizing that that isn't a real concept either. That's
Mm.
Satan is our own minds that you can that get into dark places and things like that. But this whole
Yeah.
figure of like a Satan wasn't real. And so I began to take everything and tear it apart with factual reasons why, listening to theologians who tore it apart. I sat for a few years under some Jewish rabbis who were telling me the whole totally the opposite story. I'd never heard the Bible like they knew it. I thought, what is going on here? And the more I did
Yeah.
that, and the more I allowed that courage inside to come, the more I realized, oh gosh, this hasn't been true, what has been said to me. And
Mm,
I shed buckets of tears. I went
mm.
real period of confusion, a lot of confusion. Like, why God did you let me go into this? And God didn't do anything, so it was me, so but realizing just the role that God was becoming in my life was very one of freedom and inclusion, and everybody's welcome at the table.
Yeah.
Nobody's being rejected. And so eventually I couldn't do the mission field anymore. I couldn't do that work anymore because I realized within myself, I have integrity. I'm giving a message that I'm not believing anymore. I can't do this anymore. And it's not where I'm supposed to be going. So I
That's
left
right.
the field completely, which took me on a whole other journey into other spiritualities.
Mm. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, like, at the beginning of that, you said that that would have been the worst possible place for this to start happening to you. I disagree.
Okay.
I think it was the perfect place for that to start happening to you. It's almost like somebody, picked you up and thought, right, okay, we're going to plop Ellen in there and we're going to give her a really good shake up. Yeah, that's what it feels like. Absolutely. And make you question absolutely everything about your life, okay? About where you've been, where you were and where you're going.
Mhm.
But simply put, but I think that was a huge part of what was going on. And it's so interesting, isn't it, that, you on the mission, you were a missionary. And of course, as you well know, in shamanic journeying, we go on a mission, don't we?
Yes, we
So
do.
I think that word itself is so powerful. And you were absolutely on a mission, but not necessarily the one that you thought you were going to be.
That is, oh my gosh, Jane, that puts a
Mm.
whole new spin
Yeah,
on that. Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Because it really led me to dig deep. And it led me to face and discover
Mm.
there's things called religious trauma. It
Yeah.
helped me come to an understanding of like, wow, all of these things I was believing made me hate myself really at the end of the day. I was powerless,
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was working with God. I was powerless. I had to always go to an outside source, There was
Hmm.
just so many things that unraveled in front of me that I recognize are parts of shamanic journeying where
Yeah.
you peel back those layer by layer by layer and face yourself. And that's what it was. I had to face myself. And I mean, I even had to face, and this is an interesting thing, but I had to face and and it's how to describe this is interesting, but I had to face the fact that I had preached this message for so long, 30
Mm.
some years, and I worked with young people. I worked with adults. I worked with all these people. And I remember sitting there thinking, I brought all these people into this belief system. And I remember there was like this real overwhelming guilt, like, oh my God, like I just totally like took people down paths. But what was interesting was when I went down that line of thinking of guilt and all of this, it
Mm.
was like I felt that light again and that love step
Yeah.
into that place and just say, Ellen, you didn't know any better. But
No, that's
look at
right.
what
Yeah.
you did that was really, really positive over here, though. Let's
Mm.
let's look at where the positive things that happened
Yeah. Yeah.
with that journey. So yeah, it's goodness.
Okay. Yeah. And it's just honestly incredible. All right. So I'm really, really eager to ask you now, Ellen, before we go on to the kind of more like present you and the
Sure.
things that you're bringing into the world right now. Just before we do that, I'd like to ask you about your ayahuasca journey and experience, please, if
Woo!
that's okay.
Okay, ayahuasca. For those who maybe have not heard about ayahuasca, it's a plant medicine that is used by indigenous people all over the world, but primarily it's in Peru. It's in the Amazon jungle area, which also encapsulates Brazil and South America. And so it's a plant medicine that shamans within tribal cultures use to bring healing. There's awakening with it. And so it's a mixture of different plants. And when I first heard about these plants, I remember thinking to myself, oh, that would be an interesting thing. But then I just kind of, pushed it off in my head and said, no, I don't know if that's going to be a possibility. I don't really want to do it. I don't want to be, there. But I kept feeling this like leading to learn more about it because I didn't know anything about it. And I'm a studier. So I like to study things. I like to learn these things. And as I began to listen to different people's testimonies about it, of how they would drink this medicine, because what they do is they boil all the plants, they mix it into a brew, and then you drink it. When I started to hear what people were experiencing from it, first I was scared because
Mm,
there's a lot of purging that happens, which is just cleansing.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of purging. And then, the way that ayahuasca is taken is it's done in a ritual. So I would not encourage anybody just on a Saturday night, like we're just going to do ayahuasca. No, it's
Yeah.
actually a sacred ceremony done by true shamans who know how the plant medicine works.
Hmm.
And you take it in the form of a ritual and a ceremony.
Yeah.
And when you take it, it's done in the dark. So then I was like, oh gosh, we're going to be in the complete dark. Then I started hearing about, the reports of people and what they were seeing, and like, oh, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's psychedelics. And so I wrestled with it for a little bit. I was like, I don't think I can do this. Well, then in 2022, the call from Mother Ayahuasca, as I call her, came strong. And I heard, you need to go to Peru to do this. And I thought, I'm going to go right into Peru, into the Amazon jungle. And I always wanted to go to the Amazon jungle. And I thought, okay. And I just did it. I just thought, okay, I can't fight this anymore. I'm going to go do this. And so I got on a plane, and I remember um, there were so many delays in this plane to get to where I needed to be. It was unreal. And in fact, the flight supposed to go to Peru where I was got canceled. And I thought, well, maybe I'm not supposed to go. You start sitting there thinking,
Yeah.
but I heard very strongly, no, you're to go. You need to go. There's something you're going to face there that, you've not been able to face. And this is going to help
Mm,
unblock that. So I was like, okay. So anyway, long story short, I get down into the Amazon, and it's beautiful. I'm going down on this boat, and I'm looking at all the jungles, and this is great. No, it's so wonderful. But I was scared. I mean, if the truth were told, inside I'm like, I'm with all these other people I don't know. And the shaman can't speak English, but only Spanish and his tribal language. I'm
mm,
thinking, what am I getting myself into? But I had learned because of the missionary journey, and had learned because of my own life, that if you feel peace on the inside of you, go with it. Like
yeah.
if your body's at peace, everything's at peace, go with it. So I did. And I went, and it was for 1 month, and it was 9 ceremonies. And we didn't just do ayahuasca, we did 25 other plant medicines along with that. So ayahuasca was one day, then the plant medicines were the next, and ayahuasca this day, and it was grueling. It was a
Mm,
grueling journey because um, it's not a one-off. Okay, it's something that ayahuasca is still working in my life.
yeah.
That plant
Yeah.
medicine is still doing it today. You can't just go down and
Hmm.
be like, oh, I'm suddenly healed. Okay, no, it requires a lot to work with it. So basically what it looked like for me, and I made this little mistake, but I did it anyway. On the first night of ceremony, I had all this courage, and I thought, I'm going to drink the entire glass. And they actually don't ask you to do that. They say you don't have to do this. And so, there's a lot of shamanic drumming that's happening, and the leaves are going, and they're singing what are called icaros, which are beautiful, beautiful language of the plants, the
Mm,
language of the jungle. And they would be singing these tones. Gosh, I can feel it now. They can be singing these tones over and over and over. And we're sitting in the dark, and I go up with my little lamp, and I drink the entire thing, and then you go back and you lay down on your mat and you wait for the medicine to kick in. You wait for it to the drink to kind of begin to work. Now it's dark and you're all sitting there and all of us have taken our drink. And I just remember I was sitting here thinking, oh gosh, have I done something wrong? Am I supposed to not be here? And all of a sudden, all these thoughts started coming to me. But that's the whole point. The whole
Mm.
point of ayahuasca is to bring up the things that you fear. And I didn't realize how much of a fear of death I had. I
Right.
I had no idea I was afraid to die, afraid to be out of control, afraid. I mean, I had no idea. So I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I began to feel it. And everything, the jungle gets louder because now you're starting to go into an altered state of consciousness. So everything got loud. The bees, the bugs, the monkeys, everything was like, ah! I mean, it was like so loud. And it started at the base of my feet and it began ayahuasca, the medicine began to come up my body and I began to get really hot. I mean, we're talking hot. And I started to fight this. I began to have a fighting response because I was like, fight or flight, got to get the hell out of this
Yeah.
situation. It's be bad. But I couldn't
Yeah.
move because I was completely not, there, present. My consciousness was being changed. And so they assign different shamans to you. And it was a very safe place. I researched this for a while before I went to this place. And they do a lot with mental health and trauma and all of these things. And so these shamans came down and they're like, and I said, I can't believe I'm doing this. And they said, well, you're doing it. So you're going to just need
Yeah.
to do it. You just need to go through this thing. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm going through this thing. So I sat there and ayahuasca approaches you in the form of like a very large anaconda. It's like a very large snake. And you can see it when you're in these altered states. And it's a snake and it kept coming. And I thought, oh my God. And I started thinking, I'm surrounded by demons, and like all this. So everything religious came up, right? So now I'm like going, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm in this thing. And they're like, Ellen, you don't need to, you don't need to be doing that. It's okay. You don't need to. But they let you just kind of say what you needed to say. And I was like going, God, I'm so sorry. But I couldn't find God in that moment the way I wanted.
Right.
So all of this fear hit, right? And so I kept seeing the snake coming and the snake was coming. And I just thought, oh my God. And they're like, just let her swallow you. Because when she swallows you, you're going to go into a deep place of work and healing. It's going to be safe. And I mean, this is a quick, abbreviated version,
Yeah.
but she swallowed me and everything went pitch black, more than it was already pitch black. And I couldn't hear anybody around me. I couldn't hear a single thing. I didn't even know where I was in that moment. I just could feel my whole body going into this dark place.
Yeah.
And I began screaming and weeping. And all of a sudden, and I kept saying, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to. And I had this feeling because it felt like you were dying. And it was wild because like events from my life would come up. I mean, they would just shoot up, memories. And these memories that surfaced were around dying, being out of control, being victimized, all of these things. And they were coming up. And that was how I was literally feeling. I was feeling victimization. I was feeling fear. I was all these things that I thought, oh, I had gotten over that. Oh no. And so over time, and I don't know how long it was, I was in that place of just purging, because you're purging, you got your little bucket and they're holding the bucket and they're singing over you, and they're singing it over you. All of a sudden, everything just went silent. And then ayahuasca appeared to me in a very different way. And she appeared to me as this beautiful elderly woman made out of tree roots and long green hair. And she was beautiful. And
Mm.
she began, but there was a childlikeness to her. And I remember her holding her hands like this, and she just began singing to me this beautiful song, and she was rocking back and forth. And then I just wept. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you, but it was this weeping, but it was that exact same feel that I had in the woods as a child, that I had when I was 20 something with Jesus and Christ. And now I was having it in this ceremony. The same sense of love and acceptance and presence and power. It was oozing like through me. And I just remember I laid there on the mattress, and you could still hear everybody else was going through their own journeys. That's the whole thing. You're all in it together.
Yeah.
But I was in this presence of this beautiful, it was ayahuasca. It was her in a different form. And she
Mm.
just sang. And that was all she did. And somebody will say to me, well, what happened? What do you know what actually happened? I don't know completely what happened, but I know
Mm.
this, that there was a level of joy and peace, and something of fear just shifted in my life from that experience.
Yeah. Well,
And then obviously, we had more ceremonies and more layering and more unpacking. But if I were to describe it, it oh gosh, it was so otherworldly. It was such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful presence of peace. And she was just lovely. And I remember after it all ended, after she left, and then the ceremony ends, you're allowed to sing. This was the one thing I can say that came from this, was my ability to sing was returned to me.
mm,
And I
lovely.
began to sing, just sing light language, sing with I had a singing bowl there, sing with, like, all my gusto. After that, I was singing and having encounters with other, things in the Amazon after that, being able to connect in a deeper way. And it felt like my heart was open. And I realized in this place, this is why I'm here.
Yeah.
This, yeah.
Mm. Oh, Ellen, honestly, it's just so beautiful for her to have come to you in that way and helping you to really just let go of that deep-seated fear that you had. It's just so amazing. And the tremendous amount of courage that it took for you to go there and to take the medicine and to allow ayahuasca to, as a snake, to swallow you. That was incredible, absolutely incredible. And I know at that time, like you say, you were kind of in and out all over the place, not really as you would normally be, but
Mhm.
nonetheless, you allowed that to happen. You allowed her to swallow you.
Yes.
Yeah, and the courage and the depth of trust that you showed there was just absolutely, well, phenomenal. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say the depths of trust, because in my natural mind, my thinking mind, it was like, oh God, where am I? But in the knower, in that
Yeah.
spirit part on the inside of me, and I think I knew that I was going to be okay, and I think it came because of all of my life. Just it all was an accumulation up. I got out of this, I got out of this, I got out of this situation, and then God protected me over here with this, and this happened. Well, we're just in another situation,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I
Mm,
want to say, if I can say one other experience, I also had a very deep experience with cacao when I was there, in a way that I had never had it before either, and the love medicine, the heart medicine.
mm, mm,
And I remember in that ceremony, we did like a gosh, what do you call that type of dance, a static dance beforehand. And we drank cacao, and then we just let the medicine work. And that one was another profound one for me, because it centered around self-love. It centered around loving me, loving Ellen.
mm,
And I remember in that ceremony, and I won't go through the whole thing, but I had an encounter with a hawk. There was a hawk that was like outside the Maloka, and I remember seeing it fly towards me, and it went into my chest. I don't even know how to describe it. It just went into my chest. My arms went out like this. I felt like I was the hawk. I became the hawk, was really what it
fantastic.
was. And then I felt ayahuasca, these roots right here, they began to pull back my chest, like they were pulling me so that my heart could be exposed.
Mm,
And they were working in tandem. So the hawk was there. Then this was, ayahuasca's moving this. And then cacao is like weaving its way like into my heart. And I remember I looked up at the top of the ceiling, and I saw this shaft of light come in. And Jane, oh gosh, it was another one of those experiences. I wept and I just kept hearing, I love you. I love you. I love you. And it was going in and my heart was getting so full. I thought I'm going to have like a heart attack right here. Like, and it was just the beating was so intense, but I knew again that that was another call to love and acceptance and
Yeah.
invitation to go deeper. And I wept. And after the ceremony ended, people left and I didn't get off that floor for another 3, 4 hours. I was still stuck on the floor. I couldn't get up, just weeping and letting go and letting out and shedding off the layers.
Yeah.
And you could hear the hawk around the Maloka just, screeching because I was coming out of that state.
Mm.
And I just laid there in my natural state and looked up and thought, what just happened? Because I feel like something in my heart, some thorn that had been there for a very long time,
Yeah.
had been
Yeah.
removed.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Yeah. Just
those are a
amazing.
few of my experiences there.
Experiences, yeah. Okay. All right. No, I mean that, just they're just extraordinary. They really are. And cacao also being such a beautiful plant spirit medicine, and a lot of people are able to connect with her um, more accessibly, I think, than ayahuasca,
Yes.
because ayahuasca definitely needs to be, as you said, under the care of shaman. It absolutely has to be that way. Yeah,
Yes.
because it just
Yes.
wouldn't be safe if it wasn't.
No. And
Cacao,
can
mm,
I speak to that for a second? Because I
yeah,
know that a lot of people that, are like, oh, ayahuasca, ayahuasca.
yeah, yeah,
Researched where I felt like I was to go. And I
yeah.
wanted a place that was reputable, place that had been around for a long time and had
Mhm.
generational lineages of shamans. And so
Mm,
I attended what was called the Ayahuasca Foundation. And they work with mental health professionals. So there are people that are on site there that also help with mental health, not just the shamans, but there are people that they have there that help you walk through all of these things.
yeah,
I just encourage people, if they're listening, that if you feel like, oh, I want to do these plant medicines, well, don't just be choosy. Be choosy.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't choose a cheap one. It was not
Mm,
place to go. It wasn't the highest, but it wasn't the lowest either. But it had such reputation.
yeah.
And they're careful. They take care of you. The next day there would be a lot of trauma release exercises we had to do because people's,
Mm,
and they
yeah,
knew all of those things. And so I encourage people that the way that they do it there is what I would encourage people to do is they honor the plant medicine, but they also recognize that there's a psychological component. There's a need for counseling, maybe for some
yeah,
people, therapy, all that. So yeah. And
yeah.
the guy that I had, he was fifth generation, sixth generation. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, and it is so, so important. And it's also really good, as you say, to make people aware of that as well, the importance of that. So yeah, just wonderful. So the question that's bubbling up in my mind at the moment, so where you are now, and anyone who's listening or watching um, your journey right now, Ellen, um, and they are in similar circumstances to how you were, either as a child or as a young adult or as a, in between, um, going through very challenging times. What would you say to them? How would they make, say, the first steps towards becoming free?
Well, you just asked the questions. So you're just, so I guess I think I have to recognize too that everybody's journey is different.
Yeah,
So it depends on their circumstances. Because to tell somebody, well, just get out, isn't necessarily the right course of action if they can't in that moment.
that's
Um,
right. Yeah. Mhm.
so I think I think for me, I know what I'm going to say is going to sound kind of trite and I'm not wanting it to sound like that, but it will pass.
Mm. Yeah.
Life does change, days do change, hours do change. And I would encourage people to see the little changes that are possible, the little things that are going right,
Mm.
little places where because there is, even in my upbringing, as grim and as miserable it was, there were those times and those places where there was light. Light did come in that darkness. And so I would encourage people to look for the light. I know that that sounds like so trite, when you're in a mess, like, what do you mean? I'm in a war zone. What do you mean look for the light? Well, you got away, right? Oh yeah, I did
Mm.
a good wait. That's the light. Oh, you had a little bit of a better day. That's the light.
Mm.
Look for those little things.
Yeah.
And because those are encouraging. Those for me are the markers along the way that
Yeah.
something can change. If you can have a little bit of light, then you can have a lot of light, and you can keep expanding on that light. And I would encourage people to talk to other people. When you can, when even if it's a private conversation away from the situation you're in, talk to people. Um, reach out, because we're not meant to be an island. We aren't. It doesn't matter how many times people can say, I can do this on my own. Well, we actually aren't islands. We weren't
Yeah.
created to be islands, you know.
Right.
And so I would encourage people to talk to other people, to look for the light, which is just noticing where things are going okay and right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and this one, maybe it might work for people, it might not, but just ask the universe, can you show me a way out? Because
Yeah.
somewhere I was saying that. Can you show me a way out? Can you help me find a way out of this situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and the universe will answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Like you say, when you ask, it will definitely um, give. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I asked,
Mm.
and I found there was a way out. There was a door that was open. I got out. There were,
Yeah.
or circumstances began to be set up. I meet certain people along the way. Like, look for the clues, because there might be people that are in your path right now, that are sitting right here, right now,
Yeah.
um, that are here to help in
Yeah.
a certain way.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, I think that's really good, really helpful. I like that the markers, breadcrumbs in a way as well, isn't it? That
Yes.
trail that you're leaving and following going forward. Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, I just think you just bring so much hope to people, though, through your own story. It's just absolutely incredible. And really speaking to people in a way to say, well, there is a way. There is another way. Absolutely. In fact, probably many ways, but there is another way to how you are right now. And if you're feeling stuck or you're feeling lost or broken or anything where you're feeling like that, to keep the hope and to, as you say, look for the light. I like that. I mean, yeah, okay, I know in some ways it does can some sound a bit all,
Yeah.
but it's
Mhm.
it's what it is, isn't it? It's true. Those
Mhm.
moments of light, and they bring more light and more hope and more what's the word that we're looking for? Well, it's just that kind of sudden urge, I think, to start moving forward and to keep moving more into more and more light, more and more things that people engage with, even listening to birds, listen to the birds, incredible, so healing, those beautiful healing tones as well. So many ways. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, Ellen, your books, right? So I know you're an author. You've done a trilogy of books. Is that right?
Yeah,
Trilogy
I
of
have. I think you have
essays.
one, don't you? Don't you
I
have one?
have one. I haven't got the other, and that's not because I don't want to. By the way, it's not because I found it. Oh no, I don't like that. Not at all. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and
No.
I will get the full set, Ellen, the box set, definitely.
Okay.
Okay, but
Um,
tell us about your work in that respect as well.
yes, yes. I love writing. It's a release for me. And it actually started out as journal entries. And as I began to journal, I realized maybe I could put these in a book. And so what I did was I took many different journal entries from 15 or so years of my life. And a lot of
Mm.
them are about my deconstruction, and they're taken from notebooks, they're taken from different posts I've written, they're taken from, um, you know, handkerchiefs where, like paper napkins where you write something. Um, and I've put them into what's called the As Is Trilogy because I didn't edit them at all. So the books are not edited. The journal entries themselves are exactly as they were. Because for me anyway, I believe that sometimes editing can take the very essence and the spirit away from the words in which it was written.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons, I'm not a big, huge fan of AI either, because, I feel like it doesn't capture the essence or the soul of a person. So I have written 3 books called the As Is Trilogy, Volume 1, 2, and 3. They're available on Amazon. They're just my journal entries of my spiritual awakening, spiritual journeying, random sentences that I would have pop in my head when I was wandering around and I'd write them down, all of those things. And then I also have a fourth book that is coming out. I've co-authored a series called the Start Over series. And that is where um, 14 other authors and I have in a 10-book series. So per book, there are 14 authors
Mm.
have written our journeys, have written our life stories. We talk more in depth on the journey of just where we've come from. And so I'm in volume 4, and that should be coming out probably August, maybe, or July. We're still figuring out when it's going to drop. But
Yeah.
volume 1 is already out of the series, and it's just a collection of everyday people with their journeys
Right. Okay.
by
Yeah.
Marco Robinson, who lives in this country of England.
Mm.
He got the download to do it, and it was supposed to be 1 book. Now it's 10 books, and so because a lot of people want to share the story. We are in
Yeah.
a season of the storyteller. I really believe that, and that
Yeah.
people are in need of hope, especially when our planet is the way it is.
Yes, absolutely.
People
Yeah.
need to, how can I get through this? How the hell am I going to overcome this? And
Yeah.
so my book's dropping, and you can find me and get on the wait list for that.
Okay, so how do they find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram, so you can find me at Advocate of Soul, which is the name of my business. And the reason I named it that way is because I'm an advocate of your soul. I'm an advocate of the human soul becoming all that, you can be. So can find me on Advocate of Soul there, my YouTube channel, Advocate of Soul, and then I have a Facebook page called Advocate of Soul. So it's very simple. You can find me on there, and you can find the wait list to my book. You can find the links to the books. You can find the links to my podcast as well on YouTube
Yeah.
and
Okay.
other things. My website's on there too for coaching services and
Yeah, good.
like
Yeah. I was about to ask about that. Yeah, so you've got your website on there for your coaching.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Wonderful. Good. All right, that's just lovely. Just so long as everyone knows how to get hold of you, that's always important, isn't it? After these things as well, particularly if things have brought stuff up for people, maybe, or just feelings of, oh yeah, actually, I really like the idea of that. I'd like to do that, or I'd like to work with Ellen, or all these things that come up when we speak in this way. And I think, like you said, with the book there, just fantastic. All these people telling their stories, and like you say, it's so needed right now. This is what the Soul Loaf is all about, right? It's people coming in and telling their stories. And we've got I've got so many other gorgeous people lined up to come in and do just that. So
I'm
I'm
so excited
so
for you.
excited about that. I know, I'm so excited. And we've only just got going, really. So, it's just going to be so exciting. And I just also wanted to say to everyone, because most people would not know this, the reason, because Ellen was asking me before we clicked the live thing here, the record. Why did I call it Soul Loaf with Jane? And I said, well, actually, it came from the interview that I had with you that must be a couple of years ago now, wasn't it, Ellen? Yeah. And I was just introducing myself on there, telling people who I was and what I did. And I said, and I'm a soul loaf coach. And of course, instantly corrected that and started laughing. But that name just stayed with me. And yeah, and as it came closer and closer to me getting this YouTube channel together, with my guides in particular, they showed me this beautiful, like mixing bowl, cosmic mixing bowl with all of these magical ingredients in there to feed the spirit. So, it's musicians, it's songs, because I have some couple of musicians coming in as well, are just amazing, and so many different aspects there. So, yeah, and the name all started with Ellen.
You're
So.
so love you, Jane.
It's so lovely, yeah. Okay. Um, so Ellen, have you got anything else that you would like to say to us before we go?
Just that nothing is impossible that you're facing. Nothing is
Mm,
impossible. And there's a uh, something that I remember actually from the Bible that says, when the darkness is increasing, the light increases all the more.
mm,
So I want to bring that as we're closing, just to the remembrance of the light. The sun does come up every day.
yeah,
Every day that sun. And even though we're in England and we have a lot of cloudy weather, it's quite sunny today. And the sun always comes up as a sign and a remembrance of there's always a new thing that can happen every day. There's always a new way of life, a new way of being, a new mindset. Anything can change in a moment's notice for the positive.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I know that we live in a world that elevates the negative, but I just want to say to everybody that anything is possible towards the positive.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
We're not here by
Yeah.
accident. Whoever's listening, I want you to know you're not here by accident and you will turn the corner. Just keep looking for the light. Keep looking for the little clues, the birds, nature, somebody calling you when you need it, a ray of light coming through your window in the crack in the curtain you have in the morning. Look for the light because the light is on your side. The universe is for you. The universe is not against you.
Mm,
And for those of you who have had some religious upbringing and maybe you just think, oh God, like, I don't ever want to hear about this again. I want you to know that what you have been taught has been a mistake. And that if you are seeing yourself sitting in religion and you feel condemned and not worthy and unacceptable and something is wrong with you, that's not the light.
mm. No,
Not the
no,
light.
that's right. Yeah.
So
Okay. That's just wonderful. Thank you. And a beautiful way to close that. Um, yeah, just love all of that, Ellen. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you for being here with me today. It's been an absolute joy to be with you and to hear your story, albeit condensed into an hour slot. And there's so much more there. I know, obviously, there is. And I think I'm going to have you back again at some point as well, so you can give us a little bit more. Would be wonderful.
I'd love it.
Okay, so
Thank
yeah, just huge thank you to you, Ellen, and yeah, just thanks so much, and sending you so much love. Okay, and thank you. So I'm just going to close the session now. Thank you. Hang